So on page 21, we're going to write that we're focusing on what it means to have accountable talk when we have conversations with others about books. And that's also for today's date. So we're having 2 mini lessons, stop and jotting, and accountable talk. Let me just fix it. So let's start by moving to page 19. Remember, at any time you can pause the video, get yourself caught up, and then push play when you're ready to continue. So we're going to take the first teach page of stopping and jotting, turn it over, put your glue stick on the back, and then put your X. Flip this page over, smooth it out. And then on the right side, we're going to use the say something. So the say something is going to be something that we're going to use as a connector between after we've stopped and jot important information as we read to moving into the accountable talk we might have with a reading partner, a teacher, maybe a parent at home. So we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. So the first thing we're going to look at is stop and jot. So it says good readers will take time to stop and jot while they are reading. This means they pause to think about their reading and make a few notes. And then we're going to mark down, well, when should I stop and jot? We've talked about the importance of uninterrupted reading so we can continue that momentum of our thinking and connections that we're making between what's happening with our characters and some of the problems and conflicts that they're having within our stories. So we don't want to interrupt ourselves unless it's for a good reason. So we're going to jot down some information about, well, when are those good times? So we have 2 different types of stopping and jotting. One is for our fiction books. Those are our books that are not real. They're the ones that the author has liberty of creating in their own mind. And then the nonfiction, those are our informational texts. So information that we can prove to be a fact or not. So we're going to start with our fiction books because fiction books are the ones that we usually encounter a little bit more during our school day. So you might stop and jot on a sticky note if a character trait, you notice a character trait. So something that describes who this character is, or a character's feelings change. And just like we mentioned yesterday when we were working on our 4-star response, we want to make note when we notice that Bradley has started to change of who he is with his personality. He started out being a bully, someone who didn't have any friends, and then as we've been reading our read aloud, we've seen that change that's occurring. You might want to stop when you have a personal connection, so you can deepen that understanding of why you think a character is acting the way they do, because you are also having that experience. So a personal connection to the text. The next could be when the climax of the story occurs. So that's the height of our story, so climax of the story. You might also mention when a major problem is resolved. And then also you might want to mention when you have a prediction. So when you are reading about a character or a conflict and then you have some idea of what you think the author might do with this character or how you think this problem might be solved in the end, it's an important part to stop and make some notes with that. Moving to our nonfiction or information, it might be when you learn a new fact. So this can occur when you're reading informational texts, when you're reading your Florida Studies Weekly newspapers, when we're dealing with the topics that we're learning in our science notebooks. So a new fact or detail. It could also be when you come to the end of a section. End of a section. When you learn a new word. because we know that content or academic rich vocabulary is important to our understanding of nonfiction or informational text. When you read something interesting, so it might be a really cool fact that you want to remember or to share with someone at a later time. So read interesting facts. And then we also want to make sure that we stop during informational text when we have questions. So we jot down questions we might have, and then we want to look up to see if we can research a little bit more to answer those questions, because the text that we're reading might not give us the answer that we were looking for. At the bottom, we're going to just put some important reminders. So we're going to write, don't stop and jot on every page. So we definitely don't want to put a sticky note for every paragraph that you are reading or every page that you're reading, because then it slows down the momentum and our stamina of reading, because it's interrupted and we're doing a different task. So remember only to do this while you are encountering really important information you don't want to forget or you want to use in a later response. Another important tip is don't take too much time. Don't take too much time. Make it quick. So this is important because this is not where we're writing long and in these beautiful detailed sentences. This is basically just notes for yourself. So a couple words here and there. You might give yourself a sentence stem to remind you of what you're doing. So for a prediction or with a question, you're asking the actual question. That way you just don't forget what your thoughts were at that moment when you had stopped. And then remember that you don't have to worry about spelling on your stop and jot notes, because these are for you. You might share them with Mrs. Ling, but it is not for a grade. These are for us to understand how you track your thinking as you do your reading. The next part that we're going to look at is, well, if we did the stopping and jotting of our thinking as we read, well, I want to make sure that I also know how I can use that information to start to have a conversation in partnerships with Mrs. Ling in a conference, or even if I wanted to write longer off of a sticky note to show what I was doing. So we're going to go ahead and look at our say something notes. So we have different categories and different boxes. So it says, be prepared to share your thinking about the text you are reading. When the teacher says say something, then you're going to turn and talk using these different stems by adding your own personal information. So we want to know what those stems are. The first one is make a prediction. So the first one we're going to fill in the word is I predict that. Then we see they have one that says I bet that, I think that, since this happened then, I bet the next thing to happen will be. The next one, we are missing the word reading. So go ahead and fill in that second blank. Reading this part makes me think that this is about to happen. And then the last one is I wonder if. If we were jotting about a question, we might use a sentence stem, why did, or what's this part about? So fill in that missing word is about. The next one is how is this like this? So you're making comparisons with specific information. What would happen if? I could say why or who is. What does this section mean? And do you think that? Or I don't get this part here. Moving down to a clarifying something. I might say, oh, I get it. And then I explain what I just had the aha moment about. Now I understand. This makes sense now. No, I think that means. The one that has the missing word is I could say I agree, fill in the word agree, with you. This means, and then we have, at first I thought, but now I think. So you are changing where your thought process was, or this part is really saying. When we just want to make a comment, we might say this is, the word that's missing is, this is good because, so why are you enjoying it? Or this is hard because, this is confusing because. I like the part where I don't like this part because. And then the last one that has a missing word is my favorite. So it says my favorite part so far is, and I think that. So The last two are maybe you're making a connection. So this could be, this reminds, so that's the missing word, fill in the word reminds me of. This part is like, this character is like, this person because, this is similar to, the differences are, I also or I never, this character makes me think of, and the last one that has a missing word is the setting reminds me of. So we can make those connections to another text, to our own personal life, or things we've had happen in the world. And then the last part that we could stop and jot is I learned, for summarizing, I learned, the setting is. The third one has a missing word. It's called the conflict is. And then the last one is important for when we build our summaries, the somebody wanted, but so then. So we've talked about our stopping and jotting, what we would put on a sticky note as we did our reading. We have our say something notes. And now we want to turn and say, well, if I have my thoughts written down, how can I now use this in the conversation with my reading partners, with my class, my small group, with my teacher? So we are turning those thoughts into what we call accountable talk. So when we talk about accountable talk, we'll talk about the importance of being specific and using text evidence, but also having some stems to help us start those conversations. So you're going to take the teach page that says accountable talk that has the 6 boxes. And then the last page is going to be this bookmark. The bookmark is going to help us further our understanding of ways that we can have that accountable talk with others. So we're going to go ahead and just glue that in. All right, double check that you have your page numbers that we wrote at the top. 21 is the accountable talk with the 6 empty boxes. Page 22 is the bookmark that gives us some of our stems. So at the top it says accountable talk takes place when there is a meaningful conversation that is focused, and I want you to box that word focused, on a topic or book. It is important for all participants to add to the conversation so it continues to grow and deepen the understanding of the group. So if we were in the classroom, we might have this accountable talk take place, and we would call these our grand